Do you remember when you died? I do. And the only fear I had left was to live again. Until I understood that death is but an illusion, and life is a permanent state of consciousness. Now, there are no more reasons to be afraid.
Hello friends, how are you? I'm Mari Thurger, and today I'm going to talk about the illusion of death. The biggest illusion that death causes the end of the existence of an individual. To a certain extent, indeed, but just the material existence, or rather, the end of the matter that permits the manifestation of an individual in this physical reality. But this physical existence is no more than one single perception we have of life. And because we are so used to this single perception, death feels like the end because it is the cause of the destruction of matter. And the physical manifestation of a living entity has its limits. But it's no more than that, because death only exists in a physical level, and it's simply a biological reaction to the limitations of the matter. The consciousness is the true self, and death means nothing on a quantum level. And that's exactly what we are going to explore today. Some quick notes, surely, but no less interesting. The physical reality we live in is just our perception of life, because we experience life through our bodies, through the matter in which we live in. And the way we experience life goes as far as our physical bodies permit us to go. And once our physical bodies die, we change our reality and we experience it accordingly to the new reality our consciousness lives in. Each living entity will experience life according to its body and the limitations of that body, while the conscious residing in that body can experience multiple realities. Our conscious is information stored on a quantum level. Information stored at a subatomic level which exists within our brains. But it's not limited to that, because there is no indication whatsoever that consciousness only exists in the brain or is solely a product of biological chemistry. Consciousness seems to reside within and without, all around, and it flows in and out of our minds. So if it is able to exist outside us, it's not a biological reaction derived from matter and its interaction with the physical world, but simply a limitless and everlasting existence that needs matter to experience the physical reality. And when that matter is spent, the consciousness continues to live on a quantum universe. Let me explain. Within our brain cells exist structures called microtubules, which maintain the structure of the cell itself. They provide platforms for intercellular transport and are involved in a variety of cellular processes. Think of it as actual tubes that are the foundations of a cell and hold it all together, and like pipes that link everything and are fundamental for channeling what a cell needs to be alive. So in other words, microtubules on the most microscopic level are the structures of cells without which the cell wasn't able to function. It's a web of information within a web of information within a web of information. From microtubules to brain cells, and from brain cells to 100 billion neurons whose connections act as information networks. What our consciousness experiences is the result of the effects of quantum gravity within the microtubules. On a near-death experience, microtubules lose their quantum state, but the information within them is not destroyed. This information, this consciousness is what we would merely call soul. On a near-death experience, this soul won't die but returns to the universe. This information is released outside the body into the universe. In other words, what some people experience in near-death experiences is a fraction of a shamanic journey. The information is released outside the body. So, in other words, indeed the soul, the consciousness, really gets out of the physical and into the outside. And the out-of-body experiences in near-death experiences are exactly that. Really out-of-the-body experiences, the release of consciousness. Now, just imagine this. We can come up with certainly many explanations for when a person has a near-death experience and says that they have experienced going through a tunnel and a light at the end of it, and a whole new world is opened before them. Could this be the information residing within the microtubulus and being released upon death? Maybe indeed, it could be. Maybe it's that exactly. Consciousness getting out and being released. On a biological level, everything has a limit and it all comes to an end and goes back to the earth one way or another. There is birth, life, death and rebirth always. The matter will always be able to reconstruct itself. We have this perception throughout the cosmos. For instance, when a star dies, it explodes, which provokes intergalactic winds that spread the remains of the star all across the universe. In the formation of galaxies, it absorbs those remains, those particles, and all that matter, and continues to absorb every year that goes by, all the time creating all sorts of celestial bodies, including planets and life itself. So life is a continuous process of recycling matter. But matter, in order to become a living entity, also requires a consciousness. And that consciousness lives within the matter for as long as that matter can, until it's time to recycle itself again. So, when the heart stops beating and, well, every other function in the body come to an eventual end, the microtubulus completely lose their quantum state. Quantum information within microtubulus is not destroyed. It cannot be destroyed. It is simply distributed and dissipated throughout the universe. When a person has a near-death experience, this information is released, and if the person is resurrected, the information goes back to its quantum state and we remember the experience. So, whatever lies beyond the physical is an infinite reality much greater than what we experience with our bodily functions. An infinite reality rooted to our very world. So our lives on this plane of existence are already surrounded by that world. The body dies, but the quantum spiritual existence continues, and in that way we are immortal. And this, my dear friends, is the most basic understandings of animism itself, that everything possesses a soul, a conscious, and when matter is destroyed, that conscious is released and will return to whichever matter to experience life again. Either being released into the universe or again inhabiting a life form, we never die. We simply exist always and forever. Consciousness is eternal and it resides neither in time nor in space. Death belongs to the physical, and space and time are not solid objects, therefore death does not exist in a timeless and spaceless reality. If we are consciousness, we, our true selves, then we live outside time and space. And this reminds me of the concept of the web of life itself, where life is circular and an endlessly repeating cycle of events, and we just flow through the web of life. Listen, our perception of reality is given by our bodies. We experience reality through our bodies, through the functions of our bodies, and such functions gives us limitations on our perception of reality. Or rather, our reality is limited to what the body is able to experience. Reality to us is just the information our body is able to gather and process, and then it gives us that information. So there is no telling how many different realities exist outside our bodies, outside the limitations of perception given by the body, which means reality is limitless. Just because you don't see it, it doesn't mean it isn't there. For instance, it's like the old saying, if a tree falls in the forest, but there is no one there to listen to it or to see it fall, did it really fall? Reality to us is solely what we have experienced with our bodies and the information passed on to us through those same experiences. When we see someone on the street for the very first time, did that person exist before we saw that person? Yes, it did indeed on a physical level, but it did not exist in your brain. Did you know I existed before you saw me on YouTube? Your brain only knows I exist from the moment you saw me for the very first time. And now your brain knows I exist because it has that information. But you see me through a screen. So others that saw me in real life, to them I'm more real than I am to you, because they have gathered more information about me than you did through a screen. So a limitless reality is out there. It's real, but you just don't know it yet because you haven't experienced it yet. But you will in time. Reality is nothing more than perception. So just because you can't see something, it doesn't mean it isn't there. And that's exactly what I've tried to explain to you many times in relation to virtually everything you experience in life, including in your own religions and spiritualities. Every person's spiritual beliefs are just a question of perception. The perception they have of reality and the information they gathered with their consciousness, in and out. We, for now, are limited to this reality, to this physical universe. There is an infinite number of universes or realities that exist outside the limitations of the physical. All possible universes exist simultaneously, and death does not exist in any real sense in those universes, or in that reality outside the physical, outside the reality of matter. The matter is destined to self-destruction eventually, but the energy residing in that matter, all that information, that conscious, doesn't disappear in death. Death is just a term for the eventual destruction of matter that in the biological world needs to happen to continue the cycle of life, the everlasting cycle of birth, life, death and rebirth. We are part of this cycle. For a time we experience this cycle, but we also live outside it. Energy never dies. It cannot be created nor destroyed. It just is and becomes and will always be. And it transcends. Alright, my dear friends, I hope you have enjoyed this video. Thank you so much for watching. See you on the next video. And as always, tack för idag.